There's a question about ancient Egypt that almost no documentary will touch. We know how they built the pyramids. We know how they turned bodies into mummies. We can read their love poems and their tax records and their shopping lists. But half of ancient Egypt was women. And for roughly 40 years of her life, every one of those women dealt with something every month that history books simply skip. Billions of period days across 3,000 years of civilization, and the topic gets maybe a footnote. So let's ask the question seriously. No giggling, no shame, just real history. What did an ancient Egyptian woman actually do during her period? What did she use? Was she shamed for it? Hidden away? Celebrated? Did she get time off? The answers are stranger, and honestly, more impressive than you'd expect. One of them involves the world's first recorded tampon. Another involves paid menstrual leave, 3,000 years before any modern country thought of it. And the biggest surprise of all is how the Egyptians felt about the whole thing. Because in some ways, they were more relaxed about it than we are. Let's start with the practical question everyone secretly wants answered. What did they actually use? The honest answer begins with the thing Egypt had more of than almost anyone: linen. Egypt was the linen capital of the ancient world. They wore it, slept on it, wrapped their mummies in hundreds of yards of it. And worn-out linen had 1,000 second lives: bandages, cleaning rags, and menstrual cloths. A woman would fold or roll soft, absorbent scraps of old linen, use them, wash them, and use them again. Reusable, washable cloth. The same basic solution most women on Earth relied on right up until your great-grandmother's generation, and one that many women in the world still use today. But the Egyptians may have gone a step further. Ancient medical sources from Egypt describe rolled plugs of soft linen, sometimes combined with plant fiber, and many historians point to Egypt when asked where the earliest tampon-like devices appear. We even find papyrus and softened plant material mentioned. Now, scholars argue about the details, how widespread it was, whether some of these references are medical devices rather than everyday products. But the core idea is documented. Ancient Egyptian women were engineering internal and external solutions out of linen, thousands of years before anyone put one in a box with a label. And we have something even better than the products. We have the laundry list. This is the kind of evidence historians dream about. In the workers' village of Deir el-Medina, that same little town of tomb builders that gave us the world's first strike, washing was a service. Laundrymen collected the village's washing, and some of the surviving lists itemize what was washed. And there, recorded among the kilts and the bed sheets, scholars have identified an item that translates as something like bands of the behind, sanitary cloths, menstrual rags, going to the laundry, written down by a bored scribe like any other household item. Stop and think about what that means. In this village, women's menstrual cloths weren't a dirty secret buried in the backyard. They went out with the regular wash, handled by male laundry workers, recorded in writing without comment. It was about as scandalous as a pillowcase. Which brings us to the bigger question, the cultural one. How did Egypt feel about menstruation? And here, the picture gets genuinely fascinating because it's split right down the middle. On one side, religious caution. In Egyptian thinking, menstruation was tangled up with ideas of purity, and there's evidence that menstruating women were considered ritually impure, expected to stay away from temples and sacred spaces, the same way men were after certain bodily events. Some Egyptologists believe houses in Deir el-Medina may have had a special space, possibly the enclosed room under the stairs, or a structure outside the village, where women went during their period. One text refers to women going to the place of women when menstruating. A pause from normal life. Separation, at least from the gods. But on the other side, and this is what makes Egypt remarkable, There was no horror, no disgust. In many neighboring cultures, menstrual blood was treated as dangerous, polluting, almost radioactive, something that could curdle milk and blight crops. Egypt? The opposite signal keeps showing up. Menstrual blood appears in Egyptian medical texts as an ingredient, prescribed in remedies, smeared on as a protective treatment. One prescription suggests applying it as a salve. To Egyptian doctors, it wasn't poison, it was medicine. And menstruation itself was read as a good sign, the proof of fertility, the body working exactly as it should. In a civilization utterly obsessed with fertility, where the flooding of the Nile, the growing of crops, and the having of children were all one great sacred cycle, a woman's cycle was part of the rhythm of the universe, not a curse upon it. Their word associated with menstruation is linked by some scholars to the word for purification, the same root as the flooding Nile, which cleansed and renewed the land. Read that again. The same conceptual family as the flood that made Egypt live. That's not shame. That's almost reverence. Now for the part that sounds invented, but is sitting right there in the attendance records. You might remember that the tomb builders of Deir el-Medina kept registers of who missed work and why, scratched onto pottery and stone, day by day, name by name. Sick days, scorpion stings, brewing beer, embalming a relative. And among the recorded reasons why a workman stayed home, there's one that stops every modern reader cold. A man could miss work because his wife or his daughter was menstruating. Let that sink in. In the most important construction project of the ancient world, the pharaoh's own tomb, "My wife has her period" was an acceptable, officially recorded reason for a paid day off. Historians debate exactly why. Perhaps the household needed managing while the women stepped back from daily tasks. Perhaps it was about ritual purity rules in his sacred workplace. Perhaps simple family support. But whatever the reason, the system accepted it. The scribe wrote it down, and the man's rations kept coming. 3,000 years ago, the pharaoh's administration was effectively granting menstrual-adjacent family leave, a concept so modern that most countries today still haven't introduced it. There's one more layer to this story, and it's the most intimate. What menstruation meant inside a woman's own life. In Egypt, your cycle was information, and the Egyptians used it the way we use medical tests. A missed period meant possible pregnancy, and they had pregnancy tests. The famous one survives in the medical papyri. A woman would moisten bags of barley and emmer wheat over several days. If the grain sprouted, she was pregnant, and the texts even claim it predicted the baby's sex. The wild part? When modern researchers actually tested this in a lab, they found that urine from pregnant women really did make the grain sprout more often. The hormones appear to promote growth. The sex prediction part was nonsense, but the core test worked better than random chance. It stands among the earliest pregnancy tests in recorded history. And when a girl's cycle began, it marked her crossing into womanhood, readiness for marriage, for children, for her own household. In a world where women could own property, run businesses, initiate divorce, and serve as priestesses, rights Greek women 1,000 years later could only dream of, the start of the cycle was the start of full life, not the start of a lifelong embarrassment. So pull the whole picture together and look at what we've actually found. Ancient Egyptian women managed their periods with washable linen, with rolled cloth devices that prefigure the tampon, with laundry service, with rest, and possibly with a room of their own. Their blood was considered medicine. Their cycle was read as a sign of life and tied to the sacred flood of the Nile. Their households could claim time off over it, and their missed period could be answered by a sprouting bag of barley that actually, scientifically, kind of worked. Now compare that to us. It took until the 20th century for disposable pads to exist. It took until your lifetime for advertisements to even show the topic honestly. Right now, in the 21st century, there are still places where a menstruating girl skips school in shame, and entire industries built on whispering about something half the population experiences. 3,000 years ago, a scribe in a desert village wrote, "His wife is menstruating," in the official attendance record of the pharaoh's most sacred project. No euphemism, no apology, and everyone went on with their day. Somewhere between Deir el-Medina and us, we learned to be embarrassed about it. Maybe the most advanced thing about ancient Egypt wasn't the pyramids at all. Maybe it was a village laundry list, treating a woman's cloth like any other cloth. 3,000 years ahead of its time, waiting patiently for the rest of us to catch up.